Tonight, we're moving on from the 2024 NFL Draft and looking forward to the 2025 NFL Draft. All that plus some big changes coming to Draft Countdown. We're going to talk about that and more coming up next on the Draft Countdown Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown Podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosworth, joined as always by my co-host, Shane P. Helm. Shane, we are 350 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, and 25 seconds away from the 2025 NFL Draft.
And it starts now. This is the 2025 draft show, giving a little preview today of that class and maybe having some debates on some of the hot names and players. I'm excited to dig into it.
One player in particular, we're going to talk about whether we consider him a top 2025 draft pick or not, but I want to stir up some stuff. We're going to talk about him anyway. If you've got any questions about the 2025 class or the 2024 draft or whatever, and you're following along live in the YouTube chat, drop the question in there. We'll answer it at the end of the show. If you have a question and you follow us on Twitter watching it live, send us a question there at Draft Countdown. Or if you're a member of our Discord, and send a question there to the podcast channel on the Discord server. If not, if you want to be a member of our Discord, go to draftcountdown.com. Top right corner search bar. There is a link to join right there. Shane, we're going to put a final bow on the 2024 NFL Draft with just a couple of quick questions. But first, we got to pour one out as fifth-year options were declined and or picked up, and our favorite closer on our draft videos here, Joe Tryon, did not have his fifth-year option picked up.
Oh, man. Joe Tryon, you know what? I'll pick up his fifth-year option to be on our podcast there. He's done us well in the intro and the conclusion.
Yeah. So going to have to edit him out of the video for next year, I guess.
Yeah.
But I wanted to put a final bow on it by just asking you a quick, easy question here. Who will be the offensive rookie of the year at the end of the 2024 season?
I wish I could take something different, but I think it will be Caleb Williams, the quarterback for the Bears. I've said on Twitter and before on here, I think he's going to break Bears, not just rookie records, which I think he'll do easily, but Bears quarterback records as a rookie. I think he's going to throw for 4,000 yards with the offense they have around him. I think it's an ideal scenario for him. Probably the only guy I think could challenge him is Jaden Daniels, being that he has that rushing upside, and in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, we use his legs. Like, could be really impressive. But I think Caleb Williams is set up for success just with the Bears offense.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to offer a contrarian point of view, I was going to say Jaden Daniels just to there. But outside of that, any non-quarterbacks has a chance here. Maybe Marvin Harrison, maybe Malik Neighbors, but Malik Neighbors is too reliant, I think, on Daniel Jones for me to get behind that.
I think Harrison's a good choice because, he's going to get 120 targets, right? So, if the quarterbacks in this class are not superstars, I think Harrison could make it another, third in a row Ohio State offensive rookie of the year.
So let's flip it around. Who wins the defensive rookie of the year?
I think this one's more fun because we don't have a high draft pick
right
to pick from. So I'm going to go with a guy that we both like. I'm going to go with Jared Verse, for the Rams as my pick for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's in the best position to start from day one, be next to Braden Fisk and have that kind of natural movement from both them being at Florida State and having success to the Rams. I think he's going to put up some good tackle for loss numbers. The sack total, he might not be the top of the class, but pretty close. And I think that could push him over the top. I don't see linebacker. I don't see DB. So it really comes down to me. Pass rusher is probably the position here.
Yeah, and with that said, I'm going to go with I love Laiatu Latu, and I'm going to go with him. I think the Colts have been looking for this athletic pass rusher now for years. They've tried and failed several times, it seems, but I just think Latu is too determined to fail, and I think he gets close to 8-9 sacks as a rookie and ends up getting the Rookie of the Year.
That's fair. It's a fair pick. But yeah, I mean, are there any other position that you're like, oh, it could come from here? I mean, I guess if one of the D tackles goes off, maybe, but that's always hard.
The only linebacker I could even consider here would be Edgerrin Cooper. Maybe, and depending on how quickly Peyton Wilson acclimates himself to Pittsburgh, like could he start immediately? No. So
I mean, Robert Queen will start, so I think Wilson's
not in the starting lineup immediately. He's not going to get enough tackle numbers to rack up. Now, if an injury happens early in Pittsburgh and he's forced into action, I could see it then.
Yeah, fair.
But if history tells us anything, the injury might come from him. So
that's true. Might be Peyton Wilson on the bench with an injury there.
All right. So you ready to talk 2025 NFL draft?
Yes.
Well, before we get into that, Shane, you want to defend yourself for all the flack you're getting for the 2027 NFL draft you posted yesterday?
Usually at this point, like people just don't care. When I post those future mock drafts, but I think I'm the first person on the internet to have a 2027 mock draft. So that's the goal, and that'll be there. People will find it for the next 3 years as they do. So that's always the goal, kind of more for SEO purposes and website purposes. But it's always fun to look at. I watched a lot of this, the 5-star and 4-star, couple of 3 stars at each position of this incoming class, and to see where they're landing, where the fits are, how the spring games have gone. It just be kind of picking out, not necessarily mocking them to teams, right? But kind of the order that I feel like the chances of success are highest to lowest.
That's fair. So, all right, let's move on to 2025 now, Shane, and we're going to go in positional order, quarterbacks through DBs. And I don't think either one of us are really enamored with this 2025 quarterback class. In your first mock draft of the season for 2025, you had one quarterback in the first round, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, if I waffled on 2, so I can't remember what I.
Yeah, I ended up with 2.
Yeah.
And I think we're both settled on Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers, maybe not in that order, as the top 2 initial quarterbacks in this class.
Yeah, and it's like hold your nose and toss them in. I don't think either Quinn Ewers, who I thought improved last year, but has to take that same step this year to be a first-round quarterback, is my number 1, but like it doesn't feel great. I think Carson Beck for Georgia is fine. He's fine. And Carson Beck reminds me a lot of Mac Jones, where it's just like you're delivering things accurately, but it's not crushing anyone. Like, is that good enough to be a first-round quarterback? I don't have either on my big board. I think Quinn Ewers is the 36th on my big board, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I haven't made my big board yet. That'll be the first thing that pops up for the draft countdown in mid-August when we come back from recess. There will be my big board and position rankings. Let's talk about I don't want to say the elephant in the room because he's small, but let's talk about Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback at Colorado. This is going to be a very divisive prospect, I feel, over the next 11 months.
Yeah, Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback for Colorado, yeah, obviously Deion Sanders' son has gotten all the hype. I mean, I think had you flipped his season, right, had his really good games come at the end of the year, we wouldn't be talking about Shedeur Sanders as a first round top number one overall type prospect. Like he was just good out of the gate against TCU when people TCU we expected to be decent, they were garbage, and beat up on Nebraska and Colorado State, and then from that point on, I don't think he was very good. Had a couple good games against two, the weakest defenses in the Pac-12, but couldn't do anything against Oregon and UCLA and Oregon State. Like he took so many sacks. Everyone was like, "Oh, the offensive line was bad." The offensive line wasn't great. Like Shedeur Sanders was the reason for half the sacks that he took. Like it's the fundamentals are so poor. I think he's a 4th round pick. I mean, I think that's what he played like last year in totality. Doesn't mean he can't improve. Doesn't mean he can't get there. But I think it's going to be a case of getting overhyped, especially with how Colorado is bleeding players around him right now. It's not going to be a pretty supporting cast.
That whole Colorado team was one big hype machine last year. Like you said, got out of the gate with 2 wins over 2 teams that were mediocre to bad, and then struggled to beat a Colorado State team that was bad, and got railroaded the rest of the year. Outside of the second half against Southern Cal, which is one of the games you were talking about, was against one of the worst defenses in the Pac-12. How many Southern Cal defensive players got drafted this past week? Kalen Bullock.
Yeah,
is that it?
That is it.
So I don't know. Like I said, I feel like it's going to be very divisive. There's a couple more guys I want to talk about before I get to the wild card that Nino's thrown out in the chat over here. Cam Ward entered the draft and went back to school, now at Miami. Any chance of him getting up there, I think?
Yeah. Like when you say, hey, does this guy have a chance to get up there and be a first round pick? I mean, I think there are 15 quarterbacks that have that chance. Things have to go perfectly and they have to show it. But I think Cam Ward's certainly one who has the athletic ability, who early in his career when he transferred up to Washington State looked like that player with the arm, the mid-arm strength, some of the deep passing. And then last season, I thought took a step backwards, struggled with reading defenses and making decisions, and footwork was more messy than it was. So maybe going to Miami, if he succeeds, yeah, Gavin Cam Ward has the talent, size, arm to be a first-round pick or day 3 pick like he was going to be this year had he come out.
A few other guys here. One that I'm really interested in because he's another one that came in with a lot of hype last year and just kind of injuries and faded away, is Riley Leonard. Last year at Duke, goes to Notre Dame now, and the offense coordinator moves over from LSU that put together that Jaden Daniels season. Now he gets to run the show for Riley Leonard. I'm curious to see how that works out. DJ Uiagalelei bounced back from Clemson last year at Oregon State, now at Florida State. He's another one that I think sneaky could elevate himself this year is Jalen Milroe from Alabama.
Not sneaky at all.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, he's Alabama's quarterback, right? Like,
right. So there ain't gonna be a whole lot of sneaking around. You're right.
Certainly,
but he's another one I think can take that next step to being. He could be third day to top 10.
I mean that SEC championship against Georgia for Milroe was first round quality play. So he has it in him. I'm with you.
Yeah. And that throw he made, I mean, as wild as it was, that 4th and 31 play against Auburn, that's a throw that you want to see all day long from your quarterback. Last one we'll talk about. Nino brings it up over here. Texas A&M's Connor Wegman has not stayed healthy in 2 seasons, right, at A&M. Nino says if he's healthy all season, is he QB1?
I mean, he certainly could be. I think he's my QB3 right now because I think that talent is there. Started off very hot this past season and got hurt early. showed some things late in 22. But if I was to say what are the best games from Connor Wegman, that maybe there's 3 good games. It's like, is that enough to be like, oh, this guy's QB1? I think the arm talent's there. I think Wegman certainly has the ability to be a top quarterback, but yeah, we just haven't seen it. And Texas A&M is another team going through a transition. The fact that he stuck around could be good, could be bad. So that's intriguing. So, look, I think there are a bunch of those types of we don't know players in this class. I think Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, I'm really intrigued in that offense by. Max Brosmer from Minnesota, who's moving up, is getting some hype. Your boy Donovan Smith in Houston has kind of come back. So Drew Allar from Penn State, I think, is not very good, but is living on the hype. So like I said, I think there's 15 guys that could take that step and be a first round quarterback if they put it all together here.
Yeah. Last quarterback, and we'll move on. I don't know if he's fundamentally sound, but maybe the most fascinating quarterback I'm anxious to watch this year, just because of the weapons he has on offense, is Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech. Good size, great athlete. I don't know. Like I said, fundamentally, I don't know if he's there, but he's one whose development I am waiting to see. Jimmy, quick question in the chat. Which transfer quarterback has the biggest impact?
It's a good question. I think I'm going to go with DJU, who we talked about. I think for Florida State, they're kind of taking that undefeated regular season, rebuilding a bit. But he could put that team on his back in a weaker ACC this year.
There you go. All right, let's move on to running backs. And better at the top this year, maybe?
Yeah.
And both of the top just happen to play at Ohio State.
Hey, it's nice. Yeah, I think this is going to be with those 2 running backs, with Will Howard at quarterback, who we saw at Kansas State, big runner. I think it is going to be a lot more ground game, having one of the best defenses in college football and winning that way. Yeah, I was surprised. I think Quinshon Judkins, the transfer from Mississippi, most people's top running back, just the success that he had in the SEC as a true freshman, beating out Zach Evans essentially for the main job. And last year wasn't as good, still had almost 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. It was like a worse year. But I still have Travion Henderson up top for me, because I know the athleticism's there. Judkins, I have some questions on how fast is he? How explosive is he? We know Travion Henderson, when healthy, is fast and explosive. So I think it's going to be a thunder and lightning situation, but both these guys are good enough blockers, to be on the field on passing downs and can catch the football. So I think it's going to be tough for defenses to adjust, and we'll see. Probably the odds are that both are not going to be RB1 and RB2 off the board in 2025, right? It's probably not going to be the case, but right now I don't know who's touching them.
Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. Doug Martin 2.0.
Yeah, by far the best pass catching running back in this class. I think he is kind of a Doug Martin-esque, short, built, tough. He carrying that offense. I kind of wish he transferred up. Like, I would have loved to see him go up against the SEC or Big Ten consistently this year. I think that might be the one thing that holds him back, but he's very talented.
Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State.
I think he has the most upside of this entire class. What Ollie Gordon did, if Barry Sanders had not gone to Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon would have every rushing record there is, right? 1,700 yards, 21 touchdowns, over 6 yards a carry last season. I think Ollie Gordon, 6'1", 210, could be the number 1 running back in this class. I think it's just those questions of, can he do it again? Is he fat? Is he a 4.4 guy or 4.5 guy? That's probably the one thing holding him back, but a solid day 2 running back.
Is he in the portal? Is he not? What do you like about O'Marion Hampton from North Carolina?
Yeah,
I saw he's back out of the portal and back at North Carolina now, so I guess all is good.
The rumors were that he was gonna hop in there, and
the check cleared, baby.
Yeah, the check cleared, and also I think Miami got their transfer running back that they paid. So yeah, that was off the table. But I really like Amari Hampton. I mean, we talk about Drake May carrying that offense. I think Amari Hampton, the running back, did as well. I mean, nearly 6 yards a carry himself. He had some huge games with against some decent defenses, against Virginia, against Duke, against Clemson, and really took over. He can catch the football. I think Hampton's probably the most underrated running back right now.
From a pure selfish point of view, the running back I am most focused on and wanting to see bounce back is Rocket Sanders, now at South Carolina from Arkansas there. He's just one I'm curious. I'm just going to list two names of guys further down the list, and you can chime in with somebody that you're that think can maybe elevate. But I want to see Jaquindon Jackson, former quarterback from Utah, played some running back there, now at Arkansas, and Rashad Amos started at South Carolina, had put up big numbers at Miami of Ohio last year. He's now back in the SEC at Mississippi State.
Yeah, man, I liked Amos a lot coming out of high school. So I was a big fan. So I'm hoping he hits. Yeah, I mean, I think the big glaring name that is tough to evaluate is Nick Singleton, the running back out of Penn State. I mean, Penn State has a duo with Singleton and Keytron Allen. Singleton's maybe the best athlete in the class, but doesn't know how to play running back. And it's like, where do you rank that type of player? I think in today's NFL is tough. Donovan Edwards from Michigan is going to take over all the carries. We saw him in the playoff really break out after a pretty poor season. I think Jaden Ott at Cal, Damian Martinez transferring from Oregon State to Miami, very intriguing. And then Trevor Etienne,
running back you said they paid for. Okay, there we go.
Yes, there he is. There it is. Yeah. So we'll see what he does. And then Trevor Etienne going from Florida to Georgia, having some off-field questions now crop up. Yeah. We'll see what happens with him. But I mean, there's a lot down the list, like Taj Brooks at Texas Tech, Chip Trayanum going to Kentucky for that Ray Davis role is really intriguing. So I really like Roman Hemby at Maryland. I'm on my own there, I think. So there's a ton of running backs in this group.
All right, let's move over to the wide receiver position, and there's some good names here at the top. 1, 2, 3, I think, in some order. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State goes back to school. Luther Burden from Missouri, I think, he's your number one, right?
Yeah, he's my number one. I think a lot of people's number two, but I think Burden's been.
I have him number good. 2 behind to Tyroa McMillan from Arizona. I was super impressed with that guy.
Ted McMillan. Just call him Ted.
Just Ted McMillan. There you go. Yeah, that's good. Ted McMillan from Arizona. That guy was super impressive last year when I was watching Arizona just to watch Cowing and those guys. And he just kept sticking out. And normally I don't really pay attention to those guys, but it was hard not to with Fafita, which he's a second-year guy this year.
He's eligible for 25.
So. Yeah. Well, he's going. I'm going to have to add him to the list, I guess. I was thinking he was a second-year player. But anyway, that's another story then. But McMillan is a guy. He's number one on my board right now. I just love the size and the rack ability there.
Yeah, I mean, 6'5", 210. He's athletic as hell. Had some dominant games. I'm a little further down the list. I think if his end of the season, if he does that again, then he's wide receiver 1, top 10 pick. But definitely disappeared at some points too last season against some of the better defenses, the Washingtons of the world, those type of teams. So, but Ted McMillan, I mean, I think lock first round pick at this point without injury. Burden as well. I think it's a lock for the first round if he stays healthy.
Little further down here, a lot of transfers that we kind of want to see in their new homes. Isaiah Bond, Alabama to Texas, Evan Stewart, A&M to Oregon, Juice Wells, South Carolina to Mississippi. Anybody else that you're looking forward to seeing this year?
No, I think all those transfers are good. I really like the Kentucky duo. Marion Brown is probably a 4-2 speed player. You know, that's always going to get you propped up. I think he's gotten forgot about, but I actually like Dane Key, their other receiver, is 6'2", 190, really good hands. I like him a ton. Another transfer guy that's intriguing is Deion Burks, going from Purdue to Oklahoma. He started producing there at Purdue and is in a wide open offense with Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma. Tez Johnson, the other Oregon receiver with Evan Stewart, big second half of the year. And Trey Harris,
So small, though.
Yeah. I mean, he's on the small end, but you know what? As we learned, Xavier Worthy, it doesn't matter. Yep. And then Trey Harris, Mississippi with Juice Wells. I think that's going to be a killer duo as well.
Yeah. One other guy I just noted a lot last year, but he's a bit of an older prospect this year. Daquan Felton from Virginia Tech, one of those guys that I was mentioning with drones earlier. I love his big playability and his size at 6'4", 207. Love his ability to get down the field and make the big play. I was really impressed with Daquan Felton.
Well, you're gonna be a Hokie before the end of this.
I'm telling you. I don't know what to think here. I really like a lot of their guys. Another one that I just loved last year. I don't know how high he gets drafted, but Ricky White from UNLV was one of my favorites to watch last year.
Yeah, I'm intrigued too by who's going to take over some of these spots like LSU. I like Kyron Lacey, Alabama. Jeremy Bernard is transferring from Washington to Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. So like, there's a couple sleepers in there too.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the tight end position now, where I don't know. Is it better than last year? I guess we'll see.
Yeah. It's
we're gonna wait and see on this one. There's a couple of guys who I know very little about, like Colston Loveland from Michigan, and I hear great things about, but I have not. You have been pumping up RJ Maryland from SMU to me for about 6 months now.
Yep.
So he's one, but one I did know about was Mason Taylor from LSU, the son of a Hall of Fame defensive end Jason Taylor. So got the bloodlines, got the size. The tape was good from what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Taylor, solid year. I think if he could put that together again, he could be a day 2 tight end. I think Colston Loveland from Michigan's a round 1 tight end, potentially in the top half of the first round, because he can block, he can catch, athletic after the catch. He can kind of do everything at 6'5", 230. And then the other big name is Luke Lachey from Iowa. Got hurt. Those Iowa tight ends are going to come through.
Automatically go up.
And he is a top athlete. He's probably going to be the best athlete of the group at almost 250 pounds. I think we both like Jake Brenningstall from Clemson's had some good games. So I'm definitely high on him. Georgia has a duo now. They got Benjamin Urasek from Stanford transferred in. Then Oscar Delp, their younger guy, I think is really intriguing. And then Caden Prescorn from Mississippi, who transferred in last year, had a solid year. I think he's good. So I think there's maybe slightly better than last year. You don't quite have a Brock Bowers. I don't think Loveland's quite there yet, but it's intriguing.
Jimmy said the scouts love Luke Lachey.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a top 50 pick if he can stay healthy.
Couple of guys further down that I like. Cole Taylor, West Virginia, is a guy that I found myself enamored with last year. Love his size at 6'7", 255 from West Virginia. I think Joshua Simon, the former Western Kentucky, transferred to South Carolina last year, started coming on when Trey Knox got hurt late in the season last year. I think he's going to be tight end 1 there. He'll be competing with Ball State transfer Brady Hunt, who's also at South Carolina. And a guy who popped to me at Arkansas State a couple of years ago, transferred to Mississippi State, Seydou Traore. Had put up big numbers at Arkansas State, but didn't do jack last year with Mississippi State. So
he was in Colorado for most of the spring and then left.
Yeah.
So it didn't help. I mean, we still have some intriguing smaller school guys. I like RJ Maryland, but Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green as well. And don't Brant Kuthey's still around from Utah. Who's been, I feel like, on our draft list for 3 years. Yeah, still going.
There's a 9th year guy, by the way, on our list.
Oh gosh,
I'm not kidding. I can't remember where he was from, but he went. It was in the 2016 high school class.
So, all right, there you go.
Dang. All right, let's move on to the offensive line. Let's look at let's just quickly talk about the interior guys because I think we're going to mostly talk about the tackles. But any of the interior guys stick out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's intriguing, who's going to be in interiors. We always talk about. I think Alabama has a couple good ones, as they usually do. Parker Brailsford and Tyler Booker for them. Clay Webb from Jacksonville State is getting a lot of buzz, had the highest PFF grade of anyone in college football this season, the interior line, but, he transferred in.
He got a lot of explaining to do to the NFL people when that time comes around.
Right. This is fair. But very intriguing to have someone.
Oh, he's a stud. I saw him in person last year. I mean, he's a stud. But yeah, he's got some issues to talk about too. We both had Connor Colby in our first 2024 mock drafts in the first round. So there's that.
Connor Colby at Iowa, the guard. Didn't have a great year. Bryce Foster, the center, Texas A&M was the same thing for me. Like, I loved him coming into the year and didn't have a great year. We'll see if they can bounce back. And Georgia has another Tate Ratledge, and Ernest Green. I think another duo that's pretty good too.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the tackles. And there's a pair of LSU Tigers at or near the top to talk about. Emory Jones, 6'4", 341. Will Campbell, 6'6", 300.
Yeah, I mean, they were a big part of why Jaden Daniels had success running the football when you have 2 tackles that can pass protect, but also, Campbell has these long arms just knocking people over. Jones has a nasty demeanor, so tough to move with an athletic 340 is like crazy. So I think both those guys, have a really good chance to go round 1 and maybe high round 1.
I know you're a big fan of Kelvin Banks from Texas.
I think he's just rock solid. I don't think Kelvin Banks does anything wrong. Rarely makes a mistake. When I watched Texas offensive line this year, watching Christian Jones, I was like, I'd rather have the guy on the left side. Like, it was a lot more impressive to me than Kelvin Banks. I feel like I'm a little higher on him right now than consensus, but I think he's a player that could emerge as a first round pick.
Yep. One guy who I've been seeing a lot about on the Twitter timeline is Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, he's really interesting. So he's definitely lighter. He kind of has that zone foot style, bulked up a little bit last season, I don't think he allowed a sack last year. I mean, Bo Nix didn't get sacked that much anyway, and he's getting the ball out that fast, right? So I think when you watch Jackson Powers Johnson, Connerly really stood out at the tackle spot. I think there's some strength issues that I have questions on. We'll see if he can answer those and maybe move up. But I think there's a couple. Wyatt Millum from West Virginia hasn't allowed a sack in his entire career at West Virginia. So, he's going into year 4. He's really intriguing as well. Definitely a player that I'm interested to see this season.
A few bounce back candidates further down the list: Mason Richmond from Iowa, Reuben Fothery from Texas A&M, guys that once maybe thought of much higher that kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, like Fothery's a guy that we talked about. I had in my first round and just didn't. Texas A&M as a whole, their offensive line played very poorly. So I think we could see some of those bounce back candidates be able to pop up and pop in. And then I think we have some intriguing, small school Ivy League transfers too, right? Jonathan Mendoza going from Yale to Louisville, and Jalen Travis going from Princeton to Iowa State. Both of those guys probably would have been drafted had they come out this season.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the edge now on defense. And hey, guess what, Shane? We're talking about certain guys, right? Because the deep, last year or in the 2024 draft a few weeks ago, we waited to pick 15 before we got a player on defense drafted. That's not happening in 2025, is it?
No, this defensive group is right now, we'll see, one of the best I've seen in years as a whole.
Jimmy said Marcus Bryant transferred to Missouri from SMU, chance to improve his stock. Yeah, he was one of the ones I had to move around on the watch list the other day. But yes, back to the edge here. And James Pierce, Tennessee. Wow. This guy can get after the quarterback, man.
Yeah, I've had him as my number one overall pick here since this offseason. I mean, double-digit sacks in the SEC is never anything to sneeze at. And, I mean, he was dominant against Alabama, dominant in the bowl game against Iowa, and that shutout. He killed even Missouri, who crushed Tennessee. I mean, he was in the backfield consistently. I think James Pierce is there's a lot of good pass rushers. Like, I think any of them could rise to the top, but he's my favorite right now.
Yeah, he's a stud. I have a pretty good grasp on JT Tuimoloau. I'm sure you do too. He's my number 2 right now. I'm not sure where he's at on your edge, but that's where he's at on mine. What a guy I don't have a good grasp on, and I know you've seen more than me, is Abdul Carter from Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State has some really intriguing pass rushers in this group. I think Abdul Carter, what we expect from Penn State, right, is guys that are athletic. I think Carter, who filled in kind of in that Chop Robinson role when Robinson got hurt, you saw him, emerge as a guy that could get to the edge, get out and attack the quarterback. He's intriguing. I also like Danny Davis-Sutton, their third-year player who didn't get a ton of snaps, but the snaps he got were very meaningful. He's going to play on the other side. So Penn State's going to have a pass rush duo that both could be potential first-round picks.
Speaking of pass rush duos, Florida State had a pair last year with Jared Verse outside and Braden Fisk inside. I think they're going to have 2 outside rush guys this year. One I'm confident is going to be very successful, and that's Patrick Payton, who entered the portal and went back. He was starting to really emerge last year, opposite of Jared Verse. I think Marvin Jones Jr., who transferred in from Georgia, if he can turn the light bulb, if he gets the light bulb turned on, his dad was a stud at Florida State. Now he's back at Florida State, transferring in from Georgia. If the light bulb goes on, I think him and Patrick Payton are going to give hell to these ACC quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, Marvin Jones was the number 1 overall recruit in his recruiting class coming out of high school. I mean, he has the athleticism, just could not get on the field and put it together for Georgia. One of the reasons is another guy we'll talk about here in a second that could be a contender for number 1 overall. But I agree with you. I think Payton is a really solid player. Jones is the guy with that upside.
That guy from Georgia you speak of, I presume to be Mykel Williams.
Yeah, I mean, he looks the part. Like, he looks like he can be the top pass rusher in this class, but is just super raw. Definitely some games where he was run out of plays consistently, and then some games where he just took over. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. What do we get this year? Because if we get the nasty pass rusher, sky's the limit.
A guy I thought could have been a top 100 pick last year at Florida was Princely Umanmielen. Now he's at Ole Miss. He's another one I think can end up maybe in the same spot, maybe even getting that first round with a good season and all process.
Yeah, I mean, 7 sacks. He's 250, 260 pounds. So for some of those teams that like a bigger edge that can play a little bit inside, move around, I think Princely Umanmielen is gonna be. We've already seen him be great in the SEC. There's no reason he can't do it at Mississippi as well.
Who are the sneaky guys that you like? outside of this top group that could be top 100, maybe even could push for first round status.
Yeah, I think this pass rush group is phenomenal. It's the Son McCullough out of Oklahoma is kind of that small, twitchy pass rusher who's really intriguing. Derek Moore from Michigan was a big part, a strong at the point of attack type of player. I like a Texas duo, Trey Moore transferring from UTSA was your guy, Brian. You were on. You're like, I watched this guy. He's really awesome, right? Now he's transferring up from Texas with Alfred Collins still there. And I really like the Louisville duo at your guy, Ashton Gillette, who you talked about, but they also are bringing in Tyler Barron, who is super intriguing, has had a ton of success in Tennessee. So I think there's some really good, deeper groups in the chat. We had Brian mention RJ Oben, who's transferring from Duke to Notre Dame, who got the invite to the Senior Bowl, right, and went back to school. So Jack Sawyer from Ohio State has a ton of upside. I think this is a really deep group.
And there's some other guys that we haven't talked about. Former 5-star guy, the size is there, like with Jordan Birch. The talent's there. Just got to put it together. One guy I really like, and I don't know if he's going to have to be a stand-up. I don't know if he's got the size to play on the edge. Maybe he has to stand up, and maybe he loses some with that. But I love, and here I am. I'm back in Virginia Tech again. I don't know how this happens.
What are you doing?
I love Antoine Powell-Ryland. Their edge rusher, man. That guy he gets to the quarterback. He just finds a way. And I will say this about South Carolina this year. They've got a younger guy who I think is going to take that next step. And that's Brian Thomas Jr. Just file that name away.
I mean, it's not hard, not hard to remember, I guess. It's the same as the first round receiver there.
Yeah. I wonder if they're related.
Probably not if they're both Brian Thomas Jr.
Well, that's true. You never know, man. You never know.
It's fair.
6'2", 230. So I don't know. That size is wrong because I haven't updated on my rankings. But he's one. And Devin Baldwin transferred from Jacksonville State to Memphis. I really liked him at Jack State last year. Just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, and one other name I'll mention that I'd be remiss if I didn't. It's Nick Scorton, who transferred, double-digit sack guy at Purdue, transferred to Texas A&M. He's definitely intriguing as well.
Yep. Let's move on to the interior defensive line, where I will talk about South Carolina.
Yes,
letting you know that there's 3 guys here that I'm going to talk them up there. But we're going to start with Michigan and Mason Graham.
I think Mason Graham was the cog that made that Michigan defense as good as it was in the playoff. You know, he can play a little bit of 3-tech, but plays like this big nose tackle at only 295, 300 pounds, just eats the run and gets after the passer with an explosive first step. I mean, this D-line class, I think, could have a potential for multiple top 15 players this season.
A guy who probably could have been drafted high last year if he had entered the draft, but went back to Ohio State, Tyleik Williams.
Yeah, just flashes of real brilliance from Tyleik Williams, another guy that can, is so big, so kind of massive, eats up space, but still is really, has that kind of pass rush ability. So I think there's a lot of these guys in this class that the weight is a little bit smaller, but they play a lot bigger. And I think that's what the NFL wants at this point.
Well, the next guy we're going to talk about is not small.
No.
But big guys this big should not move this way. And that's Deion Walker from Kentucky. This guy's huge, listed at 350, but he can move. I
mean, I don't know how you stop Deion Walker. I mean, there are multiple teams that did not have an answer for him.
I can tell you one.
Yeah. I mean, he's a player who just also has violent hands and the explosive feet, and so he just would catch the Missouri game. I remember. I mean, every play would just like explode and then knock the interior line over. They double team him, and he's knocking two guys over. I mean, Daniel Walker could be a top 5 pick. He's that just freakish.
The Godfather in Cincinnati, Dante Corleone.
Yeah, he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list, I believe. So he has the athleticism. I think could have come out this year and been a potential top 100 pick. Dante Corleone for Cincinnati. He was by far the best player on their defense and making multiple things happen in some plays.
Is this the year that Nazir Stackhouse finally figures it out?
I hope so. He has the talent. The Georgia D tackle. We've seen a run of Georgia defensive linemen, and Stackhouse was supposed to be the next one and just did not do it last year. Had some injuries, but he has that size and was a big recruit. We'll see if he can figure out how to read an offensive line well.
Before I verbally fillet the South Carolina interior defensive line, Walter Nolan, former 5-star defensive tackle from Texas A&M, now at Mississippi. What does he have to show you this year to move up the ranks?
Yeah, I think for Nolan, it's just understanding leverage. Like he's an insane athlete. He lived in the backfield just out of that athleticism, but he's a upright pass rusher who just didn't seem to know how to utilize his skill set with good technique, good hand technique, getting low, pad level. So I think, once again, no one has that potential to be a first-round pick. It has that potential to be a day 3 pick.
There you go. Now, I mentioned South Carolina. They've got 3 guys that I think could be high-ish draft picks, like 4th round up. The highest, I think, the best one, I believe, is TJ Sanders. Just because of the pass rush. I mean, he's one of the better interior pass rushers on the defensive line, I think, in this draft class right now. I think his skill level's that good. Tonka Hemingway, I think, is a good athlete. I don't know if he holds up for an entire game. I think he's going to be more of a rotational guy. Alex Huntley, I think, is the more versatile of the guys. I think he can play outside. I think he can play inside. But again, that might just be add up to rotational guys. I think that's 3rd, 4th round guys, those 2. But I think TJ Sanders, if one of these 3 is pushing to the 1st round, I think it's him.
No, it's fair. I like TJ Sanders a lot. I drafted him in a Devy league a couple weeks ago, so I'll be pulling for him to be drafted high. A couple others. Kenneth Grant from Michigan, the other Michigan kind of pass rush D tackle is intriguing. Howard Cross, the 3rd from Notre Dame, small, short-armed, but you remember Jim Nagy was hyping him up, and I think that'll continue. So we'll see what happens there. And I'll mention Thor Griffith transferring from Harvard up to Louisville.
Sneaky good nose tackle prospect. And by sneaky good, I mean 4th, 5th round, because that's probably where nose tackle prospects should get drafted. Wakevius Thomas from South Alabama.
All right, nice.
Just throwing out
the USA reference.
Got to get one in, right?
I like it.
That might be the only one. Let's move on to the off-ball linebacker position, and I feel like we have to start with Harold Perkins because he burst on the scene as a freshman as a pass rusher, but he's not going to be an edge, right? He's just too small. So I'm not saying he's Eric Stryker for let's go to the Wayback Machine there from Oklahoma, who was basically a safety playing the edge at Oklahoma. But Harold Perkins has got to learn how to play linebacker, which is not something I really think he's done yet. So is that kind of where we know the talent's there type of deal?
Yeah, and he bulked up last year, and it definitely affected his speed and athleticism. And it's like, maybe it's better to be a 210 off-ball linebacker than try to be a 220, 230 edge rusher. But I think Harold Perkins has that kind of violent ability, and he's smart. I mean, he's a smart player too, covering holes and seeing where running backs are going to go, anticipation. There's a lot of great things he does, but he needs to kind of figure out his position there.
Yeah. A couple of holdovers from last year. Barrett Carter from Clemson, Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma.
I think both of them could have been day 2 picks. Carter for sure, just rock solid tackler, technique, but also explosive. I like Stutzman from Oklahoma as kind of an outside, off ball backer who can go into pass coverage. He's really intriguing and a kind of a jack of all trades type.
Brian in the chat says, I don't know the last time I've thought about Eric Stryker. I really liked Eric Stryker until I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and that's when I knew that it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work. Smail Mondin, Georgia. Great size, kind of intriguing here.
Yeah, I smell Mondin, another one of those high recruits that finally came on this past season in his 3rd year, almost 70 tackles, had a couple, pass rush sacks from the interior. I think he's kind of that classic middle linebacker who can do a little bit of everything. I like him, and I like Jamin Dumas Johnson, his partner in crime there, who has a little more of the size downhill, thumper ability. Both Georgia linebackers are pretty good.
What about Shamar James from Florida?
Man, he's impressive. When you watch Shamar James, you can tell this is an NFL athlete at the college football level, and his sideline to sideline ability, I think, is just phenomenal. He got hurt last season. It was on pace to have, over double-digit tackles for loss, like really good against the run. I think Shamar James is an outside shot at the first round, which is tough for an off-ball backer, but definitely top 50 type player.
Anybody else? Maybe some high upside guys.
Yeah, Jason Henderson from Old Dominion, I think deserves a shout out for his just pure domination, tackle ability that he's had there, right? 170 tackles this past season, 186 the year before that. Like, he is a cleanup instinct tackler that I think has a shot at going in the top 100. So he's interesting. Jay Higgins from Iowa, kind of the typical Iowa linebacker, big, rangy, interesting player. So I like him. And then John Pius from Wisconsin, transferred up from William and Mary. So I'm intrigued how he does.
2 guys I have. I'll stick with South Carolina again. I think if you're looking for a guy who plays with violence and intensity, it's Debo Williams, their linebacker. Probably going to be a core special teams guy in the NFL. I'm not sure how much starting he's going to get done. But a guy I just want to shout out because he played on the same high school team with my nephew, Will Breland, is at the University of West Florida Division II school. As a true freshman there, went close to 100 tackles, had 100 tackles his second season, got injured last year, but he's a 4th-year player. We're probably not going to be considering him for the NFL this season, but he's on my list.
There you go. Cool.
All right, let's move on to the defensive backs. And as we did with the offensive line, we'll quickly I don't know if we're going to quickly get to the safeties or not, but we'll start with the safeties here. I can't shrug them off as quickly as I did the interior offensive line. This safety group on paper looks a little bit better than last year's group.
Yeah. I think this is a really strong safety group out of the gate this year in 25. If they all play up, we could have 10, 11 guys, I think, that deserved top 100 consideration.
And Malachi Starks is probably the main guy there.
Yeah, I mean, Javon Bullard kind of had his role, and Starks did everything else at safety. I think he outplayed Javon Bullard, who, was a round 2 pick, but you have someone that actually has ball skills and can pick off the big pass. I mean, I think Starks is. I think we're getting that first round safety. I think it's going to be Starks.
You may be higher on Nick Emanwori from South Carolina than I am, which is surprising.
It is surprising. I was really impressed with what he did, especially 2 years ago. As a true freshman, just in the box tackler. I love the tenacity, the tackle ability, and then he has some ball skills there too. I think there's a lot of upside.
Yep. Let's move over to corner, and this group is pretty good at the top. Yeah. And Who do you have higher, Will Johnson from Michigan or Travis Hunter from Colorado?
I don't think it's a question to me. I think it is Will Johnson. I mean, I think Will Johnson from Michigan was phenomenal this season. I mean, he was going up against some of the big dogs and shutting them down in that playoff. I mean, he took it to Rome Odunze as well. So I think Will Johnson's like a sticky corner who's tough, who's grabby, like he does everything really well. I think Hunter is an athlete, tough to get past him, but I think Hunter's a little more finesse, and I'd rather have the physical guy.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about our man Scott Wright's guy, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame.
Yeah, really nice, jam corner. I love, he's going to have the arms. He has the back pedal. He's definitely the guy that teams looked at and said, nah, we're not throwing his way. We're going to go to the other side this past season. And, ended up picking on his teammate Clarence Lewis, who transferred to Syracuse.
Denzel Burke, Ohio State, holdover from last year.
I think had a chance to be a round 3-ish type pick, maybe round 2 last season. And with a full healthy season, I mean, Burke has been kind of the number 1 for Ohio State and started to really come on late last year as more of a shutdown type corner. So we'll see if that develops for him as he goes. But he is definitely a bigger build as well. Definitely a long arm guy. He'll check all the boxes.
Anybody else?
It's a good class. I like Cam Miller from Penn State. I thought I outplayed Kalen King. I'll take the Virginia Tech guy this time. Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, I think has some of that size and length. Quincy Riley from Louisville was a Senior Bowl guy that went back. Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. Takario Davis from Arizona. Sebastian Castro from Iowa. I think there's a lot of. I think we're gonna have another big corner class.
I like Tony Grimes transferred over to UNLV, I believe. So, all right. Any specialists not named Kai Kroger that we want to talk about?
Not much. I don't think it's necessarily a great group. John Hoyland from Wyoming, the kicker, is solid. Very consistent. I like Ryan Coe from North Carolina as well. And then, punter wise, Kroger, I think is my top guy, but Jeremy Croshaw from Florida. Yeah, I think Kroger's the best.
Yeah. All right. That's enough talk about punters. Before we get to the finality of the show, we'll answer the questions we got. We had one in the chat. Jimmy had a good one earlier. Let me find it. Most likely day 3 pick who starts the most games. This is easy. Torrey Taylor.
Wow. That's the way to be cheap in that answer, because you're right. He's going to start every game like that.
But that's not a good enough answer. Give him a good answer.
Look, I'll go out with receiver. I think Troy Franklin is going to be a starter for the Denver Broncos. I think that connection to Bo Nix, the lack of, I think with Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, it's not a bad receiving group. He's probably my favorite to be an instant starter. Him, and then I'll be a homer a little bit, and I'll pick Tommy Eichenberg, the linebacker from Ohio State that went to the Raiders in the 5th round. I think is a Raiders tough interior linebacker.
There you go. All right. Well, now we got to get to the portion of the show I'm not looking forward to. Shane, we got to talk about the future draft countdown, because this is your last podcast here on the as a co-host of the Draft Countdown podcast.
Yeah, obviously we're shutting down for the season, but I will not be returning to the podcasts next year. I will not be making content for Draft Countdown. One of the reasons I went so hard this season and scouted 2,200 players and not only watched every player was drafted, I think I watched every signed undrafted free agent, was because there's probably going to be a step back from me in terms of the NFL draft, how deep I go and how much I do. And I won't be doing, content at Draft Countdown next year. I can't quite talk about why yet, but that will come. If you follow me on Twitter, it'll come in time. But it's definitely sad, but it couldn't be in better hands. Brian is one of the best in the business at prognosticating the draft and talking about the draft. We have a great team with Brad and Miranda and Paul that have really taken the bull by the horns and grown a ton, these past couple years. So, I'm excited to hand it off to this group and follow, as a fan more than as a creator alongside you guys.
It's been a great 3 years for sure. We did over 100 episodes of this show together. It's not going to be the same. That's for sure.
Yeah. It'll be different. It's going to be tough for me just with how much I love the draft, and, you're not going to pry me away from college football or having rankings or have, my thoughts on players or talking about it or tweeting about it during the draft. But it's going to be different to step away after I think you and I coming in and Scott entrusting us with Draft Countdown with kind of his baby. I feel like we've done a really great job together in growing it. And the amount of stuff, Brian, that you've done behind the scenes, organizing and running the crew, like is people don't even know how much you've done to make the site what it is. And I'm, glad that'll continue. And I'll definitely miss doing this every week with you, because I think we developed that chemistry with each other, and I think it's gone so well.
So like I said, I haven't officially settled on the Draft Countdown podcast will continue. It's not ending tonight. When we're going to pick it back up in August. The format is going to change, and obviously who I'm hosting it with is going to change, but it's not going to end. We're just going to change things up. We haven't really, like I said, hashed that out yet. It's, work in progress, as well as, how we're going to deliver the content is still not developed. But like I said, we've got 3 months to figure that out. We always break about this time every year, and that's going to happen. And we'll come back, get ready for college football season in mid-August. So we'll be back again. You're still going to see mock drafts. You're still going to see rankings. You're still going to see, I'm not even going to promise daily content anymore, but you're going to see a lot of content still. Everybody's here. We may add staff. We haven't decided on that yet. That's still up in the air, but Miranda's still going to be here. Brad's still going to be here. Paul's still going to be here. And I'm still going to be here for sure. Shane, you're not officially leaving Draft Countdown. You're still going to be on the council, if you will. You still have a seat at the table, just not creating content anymore.
Right. Correct. So I'll be behind the scenes and, still be around at the very least. And I'm sure you'll find some guest spots for me on the pod every once in a while. So hopefully I'll be back.
Obviously, somebody's got to come in and every once in a while and set the show straight. But let the record show that I pick more winners than Shane does. As far as college,
that is true.
That segment will die on the podcast, but as Shane has pointed out, I probably need to continue that in some way. So we will still incorporate a little gambling here every once in a while. But Shane, nobody works as hard as you. That's a fact, and we're gonna miss you.
No, thanks. Yeah, I'll miss it as well, and I'll miss you and like I said, doing this and all the people that have listened. Much appreciated for you listening and being interested and loving the draft like the both of us do.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to do it. Follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Howell. Follow Draft Countdown on Twitter at Draft Countdown. And for the final time this year, go to draftcountdown.com for all your draft needs. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.